City of Stevens Point Plan Commission meeting, recorded Monday, May 4, 2020.
Just updated their zoning code, rewrote the entire thing to be more focused on density. And I think that's what this council and this plan commission's been trying to focus on the last several years. And so reducing our square footage requirements from that traditional suburban style to the more urban style development is pretty much why.
All right, good, thanks.
Anyone else?
Yeah, this is Anna.
Anna?
I think the move towards density also goes along with our at least current comprehensive plan, and I think the draft one as well.
Correct.
Okay. Again, any clarifying questions before I open the public hearing? Okay, going through, I don't see anybody else. Okay, so I will now declare the public hearing open. Anyone wishing to offer testimony on this, we will try and do the raising of the hand or some sort of acknowledgement first, and then we can go to the ones who aren't using the video or on with Zoom. We will make sure everybody gets a chance.
Mayor?
Yes,
may I offer a recommendation? If you hit on the participants list, people can actually raise their hand, and it's a lot easier to look through.
Right, but I've got 25 participants and I can't see them all on one screen, so I have to scroll through. Because I also have the chat group open. Actually, I can pop that out. Let's see, we'll do that. I can see more people. I still can't see them all, I don't think.
Right, but it'll be quicker than the.
Right.
Sorry.
Right. So again, public hearing is still open. Okay, I don't see any hands. So if there's someone who is on a phone right now and not able to raise a hand, I would ask that you unmute your phone and we can offer public testimony. I see nothing there. I see one phone number. I don't know who that is, so I'm going to unmute that line. Whoever 8836 is, you are unmuted. Did you have anything to offer for public testimony on this item? Don't hear anything, so I'm going to put it back on mute. I think everybody else is connected through Zoom. All right, again, public hearing remains open. Public hearing is still open. And for the third time, the public hearing remains open. I'm going to give it just a little bit in case someone's trying to type something in the chat. We want to make sure that everybody has an opportunity to participate. Okay, seeing no one wishing to testify in the public hearing, I will declare the public hearing closed and bring it back to the commissioners. Commissioners, what are your wishes?
This is Commissioner Hoppy.
Yes.
I would move approval with staff recommendations.
Thank you.
I'll second it. It's
Seconded
Anna.
by Haynes. Okay, any further discussion there? I see, let's see, Alder Kneebone took her mute off. Did you have something to add, Alder, or are you just preparing for the vote?
Preparing to vote.
Perfect. I would ask all the commissioners to unmute themselves, and I will call for the question. All those in favor of the motion of approval signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Again, anyone opposed? The motion passes. Item number 4 is consideration of a request from Corey Keelier for a conditional use permit to operate a tourist rooming house where the owner does not reside on premise at 133 2nd Street. Commissioners, page 23 to 36 of your packet. If you remember, this was postponed from last month. There was some discussion in regards to allegations of a large amount of police reports and violations. Director Karnowski had talked to Chief Zenner and has that information. Director, I will turn it back over to you.
Great. Thank you, Mayor. As alluded to just a few moments ago, this is a carryover from the April Plan Commission meeting. As a friendly reminder to those who are listening at home, that this is not a public hearing. The public hearing portion of the conditional use permit has already been met when we heard testimony at the last meeting. So as you folks may recall, there was concern that the property was had several police reports, had several concerns by the neighbors about property maintenance violations, and staff was directed to look at 2019 and see what kind of police activity and property maintenance activity had occurred on the property. There was no violations for police or property maintenance in 2019, so we actually went back another year to 2018, and we did find one police report in late 2018 relating to a noise complaint and one property maintenance violation relating to vehicles parked on the grass. And so staff does not feel as though those two items justify denial of the conditional use permit. Staff also believes that the 14 requirements of a conditional use permit are met and would recommend approval with the 6 conditions outlined in the packet. And I just included, the same slideshow that was presented last time. So,
okay, thank you, commissioners.
Yeah, Pete here. I'd like to toss it out again that review the permit after a year. Again, similar to that last one we approved. Part of the reasoning for it is because we're new to this process and uncertain just how these things are gonna shake out. And I think that's enough of the reason. There has been some evidence of complaints, and so that might be enough to require review after, or warrant review after a year.
Okay.
So I guess I would add an amendment that the approval be reviewed, the conditional use permit be reviewed after 1 year or thereabouts.
Okay, Commissioner, I just want to be clear. Are you just motioning for an amendment to the conditions, or are you moving approval with that amendment?
I am just offering the amendment.
Okay, so we have an amendment proposed. We need a second on that amendment. I will, okay, go ahead.
Oh, I was Alder Kneebone here. I was going to say I'll offer a second.
Okay, so the motion is to add a condition to review this again in a year to determine the eligibility of conditions. Is that correct, Commissioner Arnson?
Yes, correct.
And we have a second on that. Any discussion on the amendment? This is only for the amendment. Okay, I'm not seeing any virtual hands raised. I'm not seeing anyone making goofy faces at me, and nothing in the chat room. All right, seeing that there's no questions, I will call the vote on the amendment. This is, again, is only the amendment. Please unmute yourselves, commissioners, and I will call the vote. All those in favor of the amendment, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? And that amendment is adopted. Back to the conditional use request as amended.
Dan Hoppy, I would move approval with staff recommendations and conditions, including the amendment.
Thank you. Is there a
I'd second that.
Seconded by Commissioner Arnson. Discussion. Seeing no virtual hands, no visual indicators, and
Actually,
go ahead.
Mayor Alder Kneebone here. I do have a quick question for Director Karnowski. I believe I understood that they have a property manager that does live in the city.
Correct. The applicant does reside within the city's limits.
Thank you.
And that would also be a condition as outlined. Okay, no virtual hands, no other indicators, nothing in the chat room. I will call the question. Commissioners, please unmute yourselves. All those in favor of approving the conditional use as amended, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Again, any opposed? Hearing none, the conditional use is approved with that one amendment. All right, I've got that. And item number 5 is a discussion only on an ordinance amending the revised municipal code of the city of Stevens Point, Wisconsin, chapter 23 for the zoning code relating to operation of a non-owner occupied tourist rooming house in residential zoning districts. Commissioners, page 37 of your packet, and I will turn it over to Director Kanowski.
Thank you, Mayor. This is also a continuation from the April Plan Commission meeting. The City Council has requested that the Plan Commission revisit the tourist rooming house ordinance within the city. As currently written right now, tourist rooming houses are allowed in all zoning districts. Anything that's non-owner occupied requires a conditional use permit. For example, the Plan Commission just approved a conditional use permit for that. And so the discussion occurred where really either continue to allow it as is, reduce the size and scope of non-owner occupied tourist rooming houses, or outlaw them essentially entirely within the code. Listened to the Plan Commission meeting a few times regarding this, took down some ideas and notes and had some conversation with others, and decided that maybe reducing the size and scope of it, of tourist non-owner occupied tourist rooming houses is probably the right way to go. And so what's before you tonight is just a draft ordinance amendment for you to rip apart or tell me to go ahead and publish it for a public hearing in June. But essentially how I proposed it was that in conversations with some alders as well, that non-owner occupied tourist rooming houses are allowed to occur in the R4, R5, B1, B2, B3, B4, and B5 as a conditional use, and that we would remove non-owner occupied tourist rooming houses in the low density, the R1 and R2 and R3 zoning districts. And so allows it in the higher density, which is from the conversations that we had in the last meeting and with others, that seemed to be something that the group was receptive to. I also proposed that owner occupied would be allowed as a permitted use in all zoning districts, whether it be residential low density or the B5 commercial district. So I quick this afternoon took some of our zoning map and copied and pasted it, but you can see here is the downtown. We've got a little bit of R4 along Water Street, a little bit along Main and Rogers and College Avenue here, a little bit on the north side, up here just south of Schmeeckley Reserve, and then the pink is also R5, so I should include that as well. But you know, you see some of that higher density in various parts of the city. So just to provide some additional context of where exactly would be, the darker yellow is our R3 zoning, the lighter yellow is our R2 zoning. So again, just providing some additional context. This is Stanley Street, Doolittle Drive is R4. So you've got some, especially with the village apartments. We again talked about non-owner occupied tourist rooming houses that are currently operating. If we were to go ahead and amend the code, what would happen to those? They would become essentially legal non-conforming where they could continue to operate as is. However, if the use ceases for more than 12 months, that they would no longer be allowed to operate. And so the Ridge House, which is on the right, and then the unnamed home, which is on Main Street on the left, both are in the, well, the one on the left is in the R3 zoning district and the Ridge House is in I believe R2 or RLD. They would continue to be able to operate, but they couldn't expand the use. And if they cease to continue to use as a tourist rooming house for more than a year, they would lose that non-conforming status and wouldn't be able to continue to operate. So we'll go a little bit into the nuances of the draft ordinance tonight, but essentially the first section establishes a set of guidelines within the zoning code for enforcement and administration of the tourist rooming house. And so it splits it into owner-occupied and non-owner-occupied. That they have to provide evidence of obtaining the proper state and county permits, that they've got the proper documentation for collection, remission of sales and use and local lodging tax, and that the zoning administrator would keep a record of all the approved applications and then review on a yearly basis, and then outline steps for, if we say as city staff, hey, we're not gonna, we've had hundreds of police calls on this property and underage drinking, and we're not gonna allow it anymore. There is a set guideline for them to appeal that decision of the zoning administrator to the plan commission, which is pretty standard in zoning codes itself. So the most important piece is that, if it's owner occupied, that it must be occupied by the operator during the time the property is being used for a tourist rooming house. We did talk, do we allow up to 30 days of the operator not being on site? But it really, I think, came back to, if the operator's out of town for a weekend and rents their home out, it's not owner occupied. And we really didn't feel that was appropriate in some of our lower density suburban neighborhoods. On the other side, on the right side of the screen, you see that we do also call it non-owner occupied tourist rooming houses. Those are outlined pretty much the same as the information on the left here. It just doesn't require that they live on site. Section 2 and Section 3. Section 2 amends the low density residential zoning district, stating that where the owner permanently resides within the home, it's permitted, subject to the requirements that I outlined in Section 1 of the draft ordinance. Section 3 also amends it to remove tourist rooming houses as a conditional use where the owner does not permanently reside within the home or building. Because of how our zoning code is written, when you remove it at this level, it also removes it at the R1, R2, and R3 districts. Section 4 would include non-owner occupied tourist rooming houses as a conditional use permit in the R4, and then subsequently would allow it in the R5 zoning district. And then Section 5 amends the code to allow tourist rooming houses, non-owner occupied tourist rooming houses as a conditional use in the business zoning district. Again, similar to our residential zoning districts, our business districts are if you're in the B5 zoning, you can also operate what is allowed in the B1 zoning. And so you do allow it completely in the business districts through the conditional use permit process. So that's what's before you tonight. Again, this is a draft ordinance. You can't take any action on it, but staff is seeking additional comment. And if we feel comfortable, we'll go ahead and publish the public hearing notice for consideration at the June meeting.
Director Kanowski, Alder Kneebone here. I have a question. I'm a little confused as to if I go down somewhere for 2 weeks and want to rent my house to somebody who's got a kid in the hockey camp down the street at the youth ice rink here, can I be somewhere else for those week or 2 weeks, or do I have to be here at the time the individual is renting my house? I'm a little confused on that.
Sure. So if you look at, if it's your primary address and you're going to be renting out a room to a hockey kid or whomever, under 2301.13 I2, at the bottom on the left-hand side, it states that the tourist rooming house must be occupied by the operator during the time the property is being used for said use. And so that how the interpretation of the zoning administrator would say that, no, you can't go down to Florida to go birding for 2 weeks, that you have to, stay at your home if you're going to rent it for a tourist rooming house.
Thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Arntzen?
I'm just looking for some clarification on owner versus operator. The terms are both used. Are they the same? I would think an operator is different from an owner, but I don't know.
In this specific instance, they are interchangeable, but now that I'm reviewing the policy document a little bit closer, I agree that it should be owner and not operator for owner occupied.
Okay, so
Good,
Ryan,
thanks.
you're gonna be removing operator and replacing it with owner?
I would say on the owner occupied tourist rooming houses and the non-owner occupied tourist rooming houses, I would request that that stays as an operator.
Right.
Yep.
Okay, good. Let's see. I don't see any hands up. Anyone else have anything they wish to say? Tori Jennings, you said on the chat you have a comment.
Yes, I just, excuse me, I'd like to thank the director for working on this. I think this is a very good correction to the initial or the ordinance that we had. Basically, as I've stated it multiple times at various meetings, essentially, I think we made an error, and this is a good approach to correcting the error that we made. So I appreciate this, and I hope the commission will support it. Thank you.
Thank you. Alder Nabel, you had your hand up as well?
Yes, thank you. I also would like to thank the director for all this work. I know it was not easy and a lot of messiness to it. I wanted to also include, because I've been reading about these so much more, that I have not seen anything where there's a requirement of the insurance. Important part of what I read about being careful about having tourist rooming houses is that the person be required to have something that is a business insurance, not just a house insurance, because it's completely different and is looked at differently and different things are covered. And so when I read through the Wisconsin state information on that, it was a requirement that they have to be insured. And it should be an insurance as a business, not as a homeowner's home policy. I just wanted to bring that forward as an important part of it.
Thank you, Alder Nabel. Commissioner Arntzen, you had your hand up again?
Yes, I just following up on that, and that's a good point. I just received my auto insurance renewal, and they had the comment in there that this coverage doesn't cover you if you're doing a lift or something like that. And I could see this as being something real similar, that if, who knows, if they're leasing it out and something happens, you got no insurance coverage.
Good point. Okay, anyone else wishing to make a comment? Okay, I see no hands up. Oh, there you go. Mr. Sherrill, Bill Sherrill, I'm going to unmute you, and you have the floor, sir.
Thank you. I didn't know if this was the appropriate time or not. I just know that the Claflin House, which myself and my wife operate, came up in discussion last meeting, and just wanted to really make ourselves available for any questions with regards to this. I think at least I can just offer one point of information, is that when we had gone through the process several years ago, this was a topic of conversation at that time that the council really, I guess I'll say, brought up, and at the time did not address the fact of having short-term rentals as part of residential. And I think that, I guess from our perspective, we really had a lot of discussion at that time, and maybe this is more of a historical comment and times change, but it really was the focus of the council at that time to keep this interaction for ownership on property, as well as really what other Commissioner Nebel brought up, is that it really is a commercial transaction. That if I would, consider we do have commercial insurance on the property. And that could be something that is required as part of the annual review, is that all of the short-term rentals have submission of a certificate of insurance proving to the city that they do have a commercial policy, because that is a great liability for the person staying in the property, that they, you know, there would not be insurance if there was proper or personal damage or personal injury by somebody on the premise and they slip and fell. And if there was not a commercial property insurance coverage, that person would not have coverage and the homeowner would have to pay out of pocket, which most times probably the person really wouldn't have the capability to support a medical claim. But also open to any other questions that anyone listening may have about the process. And I guess my reiteration would be, I think as a long-term city, I'm not an official city resident, but pay taxes in the city and have lived here a long time, is that I don't think the initial council did not have the intention to expand short-term rooming houses into non-occupied or non-owner occupied residential neighborhoods. So I can only go back and offer that a lot of council discussion at the time several years ago.
Thank you, sir. I will ask you to stand by, and if we have a question for you, I will unmute you again.
All right.
Excuse me. All right. Any other comments?
Commissioner Rice.
Yes, sir.
I'm just thinking about, you know, when this discussion first started, I think last summer, or when we discussed it last summer, a couple things kind of jumping out at me as to why we thought it was a positive move to extend both, you know, the owner-occupied and non-owner-occupied options into the various residential neighborhoods, and those being some financial flexibility for potential homeowners, and a diverse offering of lodging for potential tourists. The modification, I think, maybe fights those goals a little bit, especially the requirement of having a owner physically in the building during occupancy. The other part of that is, in the business districts and the multifamily districts, I mean, now we're talking about having apartments basically available for Airbnb. I mean, we're taking a lot of single family homes out of the potential equation, I think. And the same is true for the diversity of the lodging, is for potential tourists looking for a non-hotel, if we limit their options to now potential apartment buildings or multifamily buildings, it's again, I think it's in conflict with some of our goals. Just a thought. I'm curious if the other commissioners feel similarly.
Okay, Alder Nabel.
Thank you. In some points, Commissioner Rice, I understand what you're saying, but if you're really looking at what is part of our policy and what has been, our study shows that the MSA, Stevens Point Housing Study, showed that we don't want more rentals. We want more homes that can be bought, and we're at the 51% of properties that are already non-owner occupied. And we have houses that are needed to be able to be bought. And when we have people thinking this is another way of making an investment and just keeping a house, buying a house, and then going ahead and putting it out there to be rented weekly, weekends, on and on, it's not helping our neighborhoods, which is one of the things that the study talked about, the importance of having the single family homes on the market that are affordable, and to improve the perception about the quality of our city neighborhoods. So if we have more of these, I see a potential, as just like this last one did, the gentleman did for his place, was to rent it out for the summer then, because what landlords around here do in my District 3 is they charge them for the whole year. So we get, some of the students stay here and most of them leave. So we get a break at least once in a while, so that it's a few students maybe living in a house, but our summers are pretty nice. We really look forward to them. And to have it where now we have people coming in and out on weekends and for a week here and there and different people, we have to already make such an attempt to be neighbors to the students that rent to us. That's why I still live here, because 40 years, because that's what I do. And we have a relationship, but when you have it where someone's coming on weekends or a week here and there in the residential areas, you're weakening that neighborhood by tremendously. And that's someone that is not going to have to care about something. Now, if you have a homeowner that owns it, and like we said, the reason I thought it would be good if we did it, if it was owner occupied only, was that just like my house I have now, the woman that owned it, she rented out to 2 students. And that was her way of, as she aged, she was able to stay in her home. And that was the point of what this all began as. If we did it, would be owner occupied in the residential areas only if that owner lived there. Because it kept up and gave that person that opportunity to stay there and to make some money. But we're not trying to do this to make, so someone can make money that doesn't live here anymore. And so they can have a property and leave for 6 months out of the year and then not care about what's happening to it. Or like the person on Brisch Road, which has gone to Texas. And there's, you know, that's been rented out every single week. I'm just trying to say is that the reason we said residential was because it would help people that had a room that they could rent out to somebody. And there's many people, if you go on Airbnb, that do it that way. And I've read the replies back from what people say, and they say, oh, our host was very nice. They told us places we could go. It was really nice to meet this person. That's what that was about. And that's what we were hoping we could do to help people to be able to afford to pay their taxes that keep going up, but not to make another investment or commercial business for someone as a landlord or an Airbnb that they can not live here at all, but can rent it out. And that has affected our city and our neighborhoods. And so I hope we all look at this and say, the reason for this was to open it up. If you had a home and you owned it and you wanted to rent it out to someone during Suzuki while you're there, there's nothing wrong with that. You can be there, you can be that great host, but it does not need to be where, okay, the people have to be gone so somebody could rent a room from somebody if they would like to do that. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Arnson, you had your hand up again?
Yes, I do. And got to thinking about a couple things here. The comment about apartments becoming, you know, what's to prevent apartments from becoming hotels, I guess. Who controls, who leases out the rooms? I hadn't thought about that before, but I suppose that's out there. And then the other thing is the alderman's comment about, do they have to be there? It's a good idea. I've used it just the once, and the homeowners were gone on vacation, and that's why it was available. And my kind of initial understanding of these was that a big part of it is that somebody's going to be gone for a while, and so they were going to rent out their house. And so, but I do like the idea of the owner being there. I do feel strongly about the neighborhood aspect of it, and I don't like the non-owner occupied. I'm wondering if there's something to look at anyway. What are the options? Is it all or nothing, or is there a midway point? Once you start adding conditions and restrictions, that gets tricky. So I'll leave that to the pros. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioner. Any other comments? Mr. Sherrill, unmuted. Go ahead.
I fully understand, and I actually have had several conversations with Sarah Brisch about the desire for the community to be able to offer short-term rentals in residential property areas.
One quick second, Bill. Just for those who don't know, Sarah Brisch is the executive director of the Stevens Point Area Convention and Visitors Bureau.
Thank you for that. So she's wanting to encourage that population. We came to sort of maybe, I don't know, agree to disagree, but I think that the common ground that you may be discussing, because I do look at the transaction, whether, again, I hope this is not about the Claflin House not wanting competition. That's one thing I would definitely want to say up front, because we are R4. That property could be torn down and an apartment building could be built there. So this isn't about residential, it never was. However, I think to the question of if there's a property owner in a residential area who is using their home as an investment tool, I think that in my view of it, knowing what I know about zoning, is they should bring a zoning change to the commission and to the city and say, this is the property, this is what I want to do with it. I want to turn it into a commercial-based property, whether it's in a residential neighborhood or not, because in the end of the day, all of this is commercial activity. This isn't just friends inviting friends over. Somebody's getting paid to go and to do this transaction. And I look at the number of times just as sticking to residential code, and the criteria is to change residential zoning, whether that's into commercial or commercial into residential, are very weighty decisions that the city should weigh in on. And that to me is the option of what do you want to have happen on that property? And the property and the zoning follow what should be happening on that property. That is the core of all zoning. And whether you have commercial and residential, that's what changes the dynamic, and could be those options of change the zoning and then it works. That's all I'll say.
Thank you. You keep throwing me off, Mary, with the Jenny Burton, but go ahead.
Oh. Yeah, I think the iPad started out in her name. I don't know if we could do this in something like this ordinance, but I'm a little uncomfortable with the idea that you have to be there. If it's just for a weekend, if I want to rent my room, if I'm going to be gone, why not? If it's for 30 days, absolutely not. Could we limit or define something like short-term is no more than a week, that the owner could be vacant or could be absent from the property? Because then they're coming back, and if anything happened, it's not like they're going to be gone for a month. Because if I was going to go someplace, I would not necessarily want to be there with the homeowner. That happened once when I went to spring training, and it was horrible. And I've never done it again. So I think if it's a weekend or even maybe a week, it might not be too bad if the owner is not there, as long as it's their primary residence and they're going to be back.
So Mary, this is Anna. I think that I like that idea, but I think the issue is enforcing it. Like, how does anyone monitor that sort of thing? So we wouldn't want the burden on staff to do that, I don't think, because it could get they have lots of other things to do. So yeah, while I think there's maybe an equity issue here between landowners, right? So people who happen to live in R3 can't do this. But on the other hand, that's zoning. It's not equitable across all zoning districts at all. So I personally like what we've done here. I think it squishes in what we had talked about into particular areas that are more appropriate for the non-owner occupied, and leaves it open for the owner occupied.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioner. Alder Nebo, anything to add?
Well, No, I tend to agree. Enforcement is going to be probably more of a nightmare than we even want to think about. What if no money is exchanged? Being quarantined and having, I think it's BritBox now or Acorn, they're doing a program called Home Away from Home where people swap houses and there's no money exchanged. Do we even want to go into those weeds?
I don't think that's something we should be discussing in an ordinance form regarding tourist rooming houses. I mean, anyone could do that right now. If I wanted to have friends stay over for the weekend, they're up from out of town. Not that there is anybody, everybody's in quarantine, but hypothetically, yes, we could do that. Alder, I'm sorry, are you done, Alder Kneebone, for now?
I would say, as with Commissioner Haynes, I think this is a really good start on this. I think it's pretty close to where we probably need to be. So that's all I have for now. Thank you.
Good enough, thanks. Alder Jennings.
I have nothing to add to what Commissioner Haynes said, which I agree with. So thank you.
Gotcha. Thank you. Okay. Any other comments?
Just Commissioner Hoppy, just to that point, I think it's a good compromise. I mean, Airbnbs I've done have been in more dense areas where you're by convention centers and things like that. So I do like that compromise of the density. And to Commissioner Kneebone's point too, that yeah, I don't think we want to get into those weeds. There's I think it's called couch surfing or whatever, where people can crash and then they're supposed to provide like a gift or something, but that's a whole different thing. And I like the compromise, and I like the addition of the business insurance, as another condition for the non-owner occupied, as a good, it would give more guidance to the people that were thinking about doing this and providing some clarification about that, and I think would help them out in their decision if they want to have a non-owner occupied rooming house or boarding house.
Okay, Alder Shore.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I have probably used Airbnb, I don't know, 20 or 30 times, and maybe for some reason my experience has tilted in another direction from what we're talking about here. I want to say most, or at least the majority of times, when I've stayed somewhere, the owner host has been present, right? And so the place is big enough so that they have a space that they rent out as a TRH. And the additional intent, I think, of having the owner present is just to avoid issues of any problems and of having more people staying than are meant to, or noise. I also agree that being a little more loose in the most dense parts of town, I can understand that. But I just thought I would add that the idea of having the owner serving as that on-site host is just a check against the kinds of things we don't want to see. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else wishing to make a comment? Looks like we have a couple of people here on
the dog
phones only. So I am going to unmute Alder Dalton. Alder Dalton, anything? Alder Dalton?
Sorry, no.
Okay. And then there's someone, again, last four digits are 8836. I'm going to unmute you in case you can't. Any comments? Okay, it doesn't look like that. And going through the photos again, nobody else is.
Haynes is waving her hand.
Okay. Oh, there we go. Commissioner Haynes, sorry.
Yeah, this is to David Shore's comment. I think when I travel by myself to a conference, it would never occur to me to stay in an owner-occupied house. Probably because of safety. It would just, there is just no way. I don't know that person. I have no idea if, what kind of creepy situation I could get into. So I would never rent an owner-occupied place by myself. Even maybe with a daughter, I wouldn't. It would always be a non-owner occupied. So, I do think we have to think about that that owner occupied doesn't fit everyone. And there's reasons why you might want non-owner occupied.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments from anyone? Let's go through this again. Not seeing anything. I don't see any hands up. I don't see anything in the chat room. Okay, Director Kanowski, I think you have some feedback at least, and I think that the Plan Commission will be reviewing this probably next month. If anyone has comments after this meeting, feel free to contact Director Kanowski at the Community Development Department office. You can submit them through email or a phone call, and we will continue to work on that and bring it back to you next month. Item number 6 is the April 2020 monthly report. Director.
Thank you, Mayor. Surprisingly, or I guess not surprisingly, however you look at it, our number of permits for residential is up and commercial. So my sneaking suspicion is that folks who are tired of putting off projects are now hanging out at home all day saying, hey, I should get this project done. And so they are taking out permits. So our poor inspection department has been busier this month than they have in April's past. So good news for the city as we continue to collect fees. Of course, the number of permits is down, our valuation is down, and our collected fees is also down. But that's because we're looking at smaller residential projects as opposed to major commercial projects at this time. So other than that, nothing terribly earth-shattering within this report itself.
Okay. Alder Nebo, and I saw you took yourself off of mute. Did you have a comment?
I just had a question. The house or the building that's being built, I think it's Fremont in Maine where the fire was. Is that yep. Like a 2-flat or a single family home, or just curious?
It's a duplex.
Okay, thanks.
Yep. Okay, and Alder Nebo.
Yes, I'm sorry. I was trying to catch you before you went to this. I just wanted to ask a question about on that number 5. Is there a reason why we wouldn't do a vote on that now so that we would have something to go forward with to council?
I think the reason was it's listed only as a discussion only item. So even if we wanted to vote on it, we couldn't because of the way the agenda is listed. But we wanted to generally get the feedback first before we make a proposal.
And we did that
in order to amend the zoning code, we have to have a public hearing. In this instance, because I didn't feel comfortable until I got further conversation from the Plan Commission, I didn't publish the public hearing for this meeting. But at the next meeting, we'll have a public hearing on it. And then Plan Commission will take formal action. City Council will then take formal action 2 weeks after that.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so back to the monthly report. Maria mentioned in the chat room that apparently lots of people are taking out permits for fences. Lots of fences.
Lots of fences.
I suppose you're home now, you might actually meet your neighbors in some cases. All right, any comments on the director's report? If not, we will accept that and move on to the staff update. We have new staff. Director.
Yes, beginning next week, Wednesday, we do have a new associate planner and zoning administrator. Many thanks to Alder Kneebone, Director of Planning and Zoning, Jeff Schuler, Director Badoon. I think those were the four of us that sat on the committee, and Maria, of course, Maria Moore, for sitting through and all of our applications. We had 19 total. We interviewed 4, and then ultimately made a decision to hire a gentleman named Adam Kuhn. He's finishing up his master's in urban planning from University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee. And we're very excited. I know I'm very excited to have him join our team, so I don't have to be wearing 12 different hats and working until 10 o'clock at night. So next week, Wednesday, he'll start. So when this quarantine is up, I encourage the alders and the commissioners to stop in and say hi and meet our newest member of the staff. So other than that, things have been very busy in community development. Most of our staff is still working remotely. We are starting to begin to transition some of our staff back. Mark Cordes will be back in the office full-time starting on Thursday as code enforcement violations and property maintenance grass violations start to pile up. I don't know about anyone else, but I did mow my lawn on Saturday, so it is the season. You know, really proud of my staff and how they've handled COVID and working remotely. And I wouldn't say it's been a seamless transition, but it's been a transition. And you know, we're working pretty efficiently right now, thanks to Mark Cordes and Scott Omernick, who also took on additional zoning administrator responsibilities to help take some of those responsibilities off my plate. So I think Scott has learned so much about fences and Mark has learned so much about accessory structures, it's not even funny, but I thank them for that. Other than that, we do have a pretty hefty June agenda. We are looking at about 7 public hearings, number of conditional use permits, and then of course now this amendment to the zoning ordinance. So if we're back at if we're back at the police station, we'll do it. Otherwise, maybe the comfort of our own homes in June, but let's hope that this is all passed by then. So that's all I believe I have, unless the commission has any other questions that they have for me.
We have a comment or a question from Alder Nabel.
Thank you. I just wanted to say that it's been an amazing experience doing these Zoom type of meetings, and that I just want everybody to know how much I appreciate everybody's work, because I know it's been tough. And so it's a lot of work that you guys are all doing there in the offices, that scurrying about, and I just wanted you to know that we do realize it and appreciate it. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I see Armin's also helping you with all the technical aspects of this, so that's good to have someone there. Alder Kneebone? Oh, I'm sorry, you're clapping, you're not raising your hand. Got it. Sorry, the icons are still a little fuzzy for me. All right, I think we're done, and our agenda is exhausted. Thank you all again very much. Alder Nabel put it perfectly. Things are difficult to adapt to sometimes, but I think we're doing a fabulous job. Everything is moving along. It's a little bit slower. We need to be a little more patient than we usually are, but I want to thank you all for coming with us on this journey, and hopefully we'll be out of this soon if we can follow the rules and hopefully find at least some sort of treatment or vaccine for this. Everyone have a good night, and we will talk to you later. Thank you.
A video of this meeting is available for viewing on the city's website, stevenspoint.com/videos.